Hello there, lovely people, it's Alex from Nintendo Life here. Now, I've been thinking about, of all things, the Nintendo Switch because, well, it's kind of my job. More specifically, I've been thinking about the patented HD rumble that Nintendo has been throwing left, right and center, saying that it's the next big thing. And I thought to myself, what's the point of it? Well, I started thinking a little bit more deeply and I came up with some really, what I think are quite interesting ideas for ways that HD Rumble can be implemented into games in various different ways, from, sort of the standard, just sort of having something that makes things slightly, a little token thing, like, sort of just like Rumble generally is used in games these days, to something that actually incorporates it into the gameplay. And I'd like to share them with you today. First of all, the really basic things that are basically just HD Rumble, in the most basic sense. Things like anyone who's ever chopped wood. Now, this is going to sound really weird, but anyone who's ever chopped wood knows that there's a very specific feeling you get as you drive the axe into the wood. You get that initial hit and it sort of bounces back off the wood and through the axe into your hand, and that's something that you can't get from a woo, sort of a rumble like that. But with HD Rumble, when you're in Zelda or something chopping down trees, I'm sure you could probably get that fairly accurately. It's not gonna, it's not gonna feel like it really does when you're chopping wood because you're not chopping wood, but it would still feel pretty good. And I think that'd be a nice little token thing, nice little token inclusion of HD Rumble. Another thing you could do, a little bit more immersive, is say you're going around in sort of like a horror game or something, and you've got a torch or a flashlight, as it's known in America, and you're turning on maybe even motion control, so you're holding the Joy-Con like this, and you go to click it on, and you click it, and you actually feel the click as though it was some sort of one of those oldie-timey torches that have those really clicky buttons on them. And I think, because you often get those in those sort of horror games, you get those old-fashioned style torches. And so to have that actually feel the click, I think that would be something really quite special. Not as special as what's coming up, though. As I was thinking more and more, I thought about various other ways in which Rumble is currently used and how it could be implemented in different ways in things like, well, Animal Crossing was an idea that I had. In winter, I think you can get it other times of year as well, I'm not entirely sure about that, though. You can get mole crickets, which are things you actually have to dig into the ground for in order to find them. And in order to find them, you've got to listen out for them using sound. You've got to listen out for a... That could so easily be replaced with HD Rumble. You instead of listening out for a... You're feeling for a... You get the idea. And coming back to Zelda again, what about when, the old-fashioned thing where you strike a wall and you can hear, if it's normal, it'll just go sort of like quang, and if it's not normal and you can actually bomb it and it'll, reveal an entrance, it goes whooping, or at least it did in Ocarina of Time. Imagine if you had that, but instead of it making a different sound, it feels different with the rumble. So, usually it just feels like a thud, thud. But if you swing and it's breakable, it goes sort of like bing, woo, maybe a vibration going through. I don't know, I'm making stuff up. But I do think by taking it to the HD Rumble, it would be much more realistic, because the idea of a wall making a slightly different sound because you can blow it up with a bomb is kind of unrealistic. I mean, it's not that bad, because at the end of the day, it's still just a game, it's fantasy. But even so, I think, to have that feedback in the HD Rumble, I think that would be pretty tasty. Now, we've done the boring stuff, and now we're going to get onto the the really meaty, interesting stuff is. And the first idea I had was, again, it's kind of boring compared to, I'm sure this has been said dozens of times before, but a lock-picking minigame, much like in sort of like Fallout or Skyrim or something like that, where you lock-pick, but instead of actually seeing the lock, you can just feel it, and you can feel the individual pins pinging up and going into place, and then, when you've done them all, you can turn the barrel, something like that. It's really quite basic, but, I mean, I like the idea, but I kind of feel that in the context of Skyrim or Fallout, it's a bit gimmicky, and really those sort of games really are sort of more hardcore, so it might just be, too distracting. However, coming back to the horror game idea, what about if you could feel your way, if you're in like a proper pitch black room, and I'm talking really pitch black, the screen is just pure black, you can't see anything, but what you can do is hear things, and you can feel along the wall. So maybe if you had surround sound or you had some nice headphones on, you could hear how your footsteps were reverberating off the walls, and you could feel along the wall with your Joy-Con. You could feel maybe your shoulders brushing up against it as you desperately clutch onto the gun or whatever it is that you have in order to fight off the hideous monster that may want to, live, at the edge of rooms, maybe like rats. They go along the edge of walls, don't they? Rats and mice. They like to run along the side of walls It's sort of like an instinctive thing. I don't know why they do it. But you know, sort of maybe the monster would do that. So, you know, if you felt, you know, your shoulder brushing up against the wall, you know to get away from that thing. It would be cool. Another idea I had, and this would be, you know, I don't know how you would implement it into a game per se, or whether it would be sort of like a mini game amongst a much larger game, but would be something like fossil excavation. And you use the Joy-Cons, maybe using motion controls, maybe not. For your argument's sake, I'm going to say using motion controls, and you can feel you're scraping away the soil, scrapey as we used to call it in my archaeology class, and you're scraping away, and then all of a sudden you feel a different scrape. You feel more like a rasping rather than the standard sort of just moving dirt. You feel a rasping, and you know there's something underneath. Maybe it's a bone, maybe it's a stone, and so you know to change out, and you get the brush out and you brush the soil away instead, and you know it reveals the stone or, you know, the bone or something, and you haven't damaged it. You've only just very slightly scraped it. But if you just keep scraping away, you could damage the bone, and that would be bad. It could be a Jurassic Park game. You know, Warner Brothers, whoever does it, get in touch. Done. A similar sort of idea I had would, again, maybe part of a mini game or some smaller part of a greater game, is feeling heartbeats through the controller. And maybe, you know, maybe it's your own in a horror game, so, you know, sort of, you know, the monster's nearby because bum, 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 you can feel it in your hand. Or maybe it's someone else's heartbeat. Now, imagine you're playing some sort of medical game and you're a doctor, somebody's collapsed, and you've got to go and check whether they're okay. And you go up to them and you try and feel for a pulse, and you try and feel for a pulse, and you can feel the pulse through your hand. But is that just your heartbeat that you can feel, you know, the Joy-Con representing your heartbeat because you're nervous and you've got to calm yourself down with a glass of water or something else? So you try and feel their heartbeat, which is a little bit more accurate, and so you know, maybe again motion control, but it could just be standard controls as well. You put your hand onto the chest of the person, you can feel something there, you can feel the heartbeat, and you know that they're still alive, so it's okay. And if they're not alive, you can just give them a shot of something that will bring them back to life, because there's probably something of that exists in the medical field. I'm not a doctor, do not listen to my medical advice. Although, speaking of medical, another idea I had, which builds upon a previous idea for a game that already exists. It's a laparoscopic game. Now, bear with me. There is a game on the Wii U eShop which is designed to teach medical students how to perform laparoscopies, which is keyhole surgery, if that means any more to you. Basically, little tiny holes, and you put little sort of robot-y arms through, and you basically do things without having to cause a great big gash in someone. Now, you could actually buy a peripheral which used 2 Wii remotes, and you slot them in, and it was actually, you know, supposed to represent a laparoscopic device controller, I don't know what they're called, but to perform this keyhole surgery. And it's insane, you know. So, I mean, the device itself is ludicrously expensive. And I actually have one, and I wanted to get it out for this video, but I can't find it. However, a while ago I did do a very long and embarrassing video all about it. Oh, look, there's a blue orb there that we could have used. We didn't have to go all the way back and do all that hoo-ha. You can click that card up there, and it's embarrassing because not only is it old, but I also managed to mispronounce laparoscopic every time. And it essentially uses the same principle as that. You strap your Joy-Cons into something and you move it back and forth, and you got all the controls and everything, and the Joy-Cons are so much more accurate. You don't need to sort of like put them in the neutral position, calibrate, tell the machine everything's a go, and then it goes okay, and it knows exactly where they are. They're so much more accurate than the Wii remotes. It would be piece of cake. And finally, I had one last idea. Now, I don't know how well this would work in practice, but in theory, I think it's pretty cool. Rather than restricting your vision or anything like that, it gives you all your visual, but you are playing as a deaf character in a game, you know, some sort of, story-driven game or something like that. It could be anything, but you are deaf. There is no audio. You can't hear anything, and all you can do is you can feel subtle vibrations and things like that when people are speaking. Maybe if you're in a room where you could naturally be able to feel the vibrations, just very slight vibrations, but you can also feel footsteps if people are moving around, on one of those semi-hollow floors or something like that. And you are feeling the world, and you're through the perspective of somebody who can't hear. And I think that would be a really interesting way to have a game. It could open up all sorts of interesting gameplay opportunities. It could also be really, really boring. I don't know, because I'm not a games developer, but I don't know. The idea just intrigues me, and having the HD rumble to be able to give you that additional sense, in a sense, would make it all a little bit more realistic and wouldn't, sort of restrict you in the same way. You'd have more ways of feeling and understanding the world around you, little things like that. It could work, it could not, I don't know, but it's a nice idea. I think. And of course, the most important application of HD Rumble is an ice cube counting game. But what do you think? Do you have any bright ideas for that HD Rumble that is oh so good? Oh, and by the way, in case you didn't know, yes, it's in the Joy-Cons, it is in the Pro Controller, and those are all the controllers. But if you've got any ideas for it, then let us know your ideas down there in the comments. Or just leave a comment saying hello. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, then why don't you put your hand on that subscribe button and really feel what it's all about. And be sure to check out NintendoLife.com for all sorts of lovely Nintendo-related content. Thank you again for watching. Bye-bye.